Hey, all. Um, this week I wanted to take a moment to say what I think makes the difference between a good event photographer and a great event photographer. It's winter here in Bennington, so not a lot of activity for me outside taking pictures. However, um, as I'm looking around the property, I'm realizing there's a lot of wildlife photographs I could be taking that for some reason I haven't been. I've been relying on my security cameras to pick them up. I've got a pair of rabbits bouncing around. I've got I don't know how many deer that wander through the property, and actually I've found spots where they've been nesting close to the house because the house makes a nice windbreak for them. And I'm not a hunter, so they're safe here around the house. I've got my raccoons, my skunks are back. The feeders are filled with birds. So I've got a lot of things I could be taking photographs of. And the reason I point that out is the difference to me between a good event photographer and a great one is practice. Being able to just pick up the camera and know where all your settings are and spin your fingers where they need to be so that you can pay attention to the action and catch the action rather than having to remember where you put where the settings are is something you have to keep up with. And I'll notice that if I have a layoff, like for example in the winter, and I don't do it and I go back to taking event photographs again come spring, I'm kind of rusty on where everything is and the directions everything goes in, which way turns the shutter speed up or down, for example. I can lose some of that over that time. And for some reason, that one always gets me. I can figure out the F just fine. Shutter speed, I always get reversed. ISO, never. And those are the three settings I shoot in RAW. Manual shots. So with the Canon, I've got my ISO on the back, so my thumb takes care of that. And my thumb also takes care of the F, and my pointer finger takes care of the shutter speed. And that's the one I always go in the wrong direction every single time. Doesn't matter how much I practice, always gets me. But again, when you're shooting events, everything happens very quickly. And you need to keep your focus on the event and not on your camera, if at all possible. And that's what you want to do. You want to focus on that. You want to just be, everything you want with the camera has to be second nature to you, right? That swapping out the lenses is second nature. One thing I did when I was doing lens rental, again, shout out for that company. Love the company. Don't get any money from them, but I love the company. And I wanted to go grab a lens that I wanted to go out and use in the field. And it wasn't one that, it might be something I might be interested in buying, or it might be something I would never buy. I don't need an 800 millimeter lens, but by God, that was fun to have. As the lens would come in, as soon as it would come in, the next thing I would do is take it out of the package and practice over and over again, popping that lens on and off the camera till it became second nature to me. When you're talking something small, like a 100 to 400 or 100 to 600, or even my 28 to 70, they're fairly lightweight, right? They're easy to pop on. The 28 to 70 is because it's an f2.8 across the board, it's a heavier lens than my 100 telephoto. But having that 800, that's a piece of glass. I think I got an f4, so it was an expensive rental. I love taking photographs with it. Wish it was something I could afford to have, but the weight differential is so much that putting it on and off the camera changes quite a bit, right? You're not doing it the same. I don't do it the same way with that heavy a lens as I do with the lighter lenses. And with those lenses, you're not attaching the camera to the tripod. You're attaching the lens. because to attach the camera to it puts too much weight on the camera holding that lens up. Plus, because of the size of the lens, having it out there throws that center of gravity off. So you want to mount those directly to the tripod at the lens point, because that'll balance it out. It makes it makes even a inexpensive tripod, which is what I was using at the time, handle it a little easier. It doesn't have quite as much pull forward, so that it'll hold up a little better and hold things a little bit more strongly. But it all comes down to practice. And if you're going to take some time off, take some time off. But, you know, if you've got a family event coming up, grab the camera and take some photographs. Right? Get some photographs of some dogs playing in a park, or squirrels running through the trees, or the birds flying around. Keep into the art. I know you'll have a whole lot of things about how it should be posed and framed and all of that stuff, but it still comes down to you being able to use your equipment as quickly, efficiently as possible, right? Being able to grab that photograph that nobody else can get because they're still trying to figure out where the settings are on their camera while you're just taking the photographs and going from scene to scene to scene and just catching those photographs that nobody else can get. And that includes people that are using their cell phones, right? I'm not a big fan of cell phone cameras for most things. There are some things that I will use my cell phone camera for. If I want to send a picture off to a friend, I can just use the cell phone camera and send it off. Or I can use the Canon Connect and use my real camera, as I'll phrase it, to take that photograph and drop it onto my phone or to a tablet, at which place, if I'm using my tablet especially, I've got Lightroom on there. I can make some tweaks to the photo before it even goes out. So it gives me some flexibility that I get, and I'll get a better photograph from it. I know that a lot of the cell phone cameras now allow you to shoot kind of raw-ish and manual-ish, but I know a lot of people don't do it that way. I like to have control over what my photographs look like. That's me. Not because I want control over everything, just because I think that by starting out in a raw format, that gives me much more flexibility in the way the photograph is going to end up looking than if I start out with a preset image. Right? Now, that doesn't mean I may not use presets in Lightroom, different type of presets, because with those presets, you can always dial things up and down. It didn't make a change to the photograph. But when you're talking about something coming out of a phone, you may not be getting a raw image. You're getting what the image is processed in there, especially if it's a JPEG. And then you have to work with that. You have to work with the JPEG artifacting. You have to work with what the quality of the JPEG is, what settings it made on it. Can you back off a setting if you don't like it? Or if you're trying to dial up a little contrast and it gets too dark, is there anything you can do about that other than cranking it up? And if you crank up the brightness on it, that might make it wash out, so that you get more opportunity to get the photograph looking in your style when you're dealing with a raw photograph. And like I said, I know that some of the phones are starting to go that way. But again, how do you edit it? If you've got Lightroom on the phone, you can do it that way. Or you got to take it off the phone. I think the cameras work better. They've got better lenses that you can get. Like I said, had an 800 millimeter lens. It's not something you're going to be able to do with your cell phone. And even though my new cell phone, my Galaxy 25, has a 10 times zoom in it, I've seen the image from it. It looks okay, but it looks like it's a digital zoom as opposed to a real zoom. So digital as opposed to glass creating the enlargement. And so it just allows for a little bit more to be done using your own camera. But again, practice, practice, practice. And that includes if you're going to use your cell phone taking pictures, practice with it. Practice seeing what the settings are, seeing where the settings are, how quickly you can get to the settings. If you were having dinner with the family for the holidays and you want to take some pictures with it, how quickly can you whip out that phone, get the settings that you want baked into that phone, and take the pictures, right? It's partly speed so that you can get it done quickly, because you're going to want to make sure that you're getting pictures that you want to capture and you don't miss the shot. But at the same time, it's also just that routine that I just take this up and I do this and this and this and I'm done, and I don't have to think about it anymore. And the more that you repeat something, the more ingrained it becomes in you, and the less you have to think about it when you take the photograph. Ideally, you don't want to think about a thing when you're taking the photograph. And how often do you think about pushing the shutter? I have to when I've got gloves on. That's the only time, just because I'm not sure I'm hitting it, because the gloves don't give me quite the feedback that I can feel the trigger when it gets clicked. And I've got my cameras on silent, so that's on me. But again, you don't really think about it, right? You bring the camera up, you see what you want, you click the shutter. It's not something you think about. And that's the way you should get with all of your settings. If you're going to be shooting manual, you need to be able to dial in those settings as quickly as possible with as little fuss as possible. And you cheat when you can. If you're going into a darkened room, right, you're in a house taking photographs, whereas opposed you were just outside, for example, taking pictures of the dogs running around, or the squirrel running up the tree, or whatever you've taken a picture of outside, and now you're going to go inside to take pictures. Dial that thing down. Get it set up so that it's close to what you want it to be, so that you're not making massive changes to everything, and you're making just more subtle changes, because you've already know about what the lighting is going to be inside. You know what you got to set your ISO for. For example, when I'm at the fort, I can drop it down to and get a good picture at an 80th of a second. I don't want to go below that. But that 80th of a second means that now I've got a particular ISO that I'm using, and that's with the 2.8, with the 24 to 70 on the 2.8. So I got a 2.8 f. I've got 1/80th of a second, and dialing the ISO way up, usually in the 1600 range, lets me get a grainy-ish photograph that comes out looking pretty good, but works with the lighting that I've got, which is very little. Inside the buildings at the fort, there may be an outside window or two outside windows in a room, and that's it. And depending on where the sun is at the time, you may or may not be getting much in the way of light coming through those windows. So again, I know what it's going to be. I can set that ISO to 1600 right off the rip. I can set my shutter speed to 80, then walk into that situation, knowing that I've got most of my stuff set where I need it to be. If I'm using the zoom lens, which is really hard to use inside these rooms because they're not very big, but if I were to use that, now I'm talking an f4.6, I believe is the bottom on that. And so I've got to obviously change my ISO and make it much higher, because I don't want to go below that 80th of a second, because people are moving, and unless they're absolutely frozen, I've got to have at least an 80th of a second to make sure that I got a good shot. But goal here is just practice. Practice on the birds, whatever you can see out your windows, practice on. If you got pets, practice on them. Throw a ball down the hallway, or kick it across the room, let your cat go chase it, and see how many photographs you can take of that cat that are clean, that are set for the setting that you don't have to adjust the brightness, and that you're able to capture the entire animal. See how quickly you can do it. Practice this winter. Give yourself something to do and something to shoot for, so that when spring rolls around, you can get those shots every time. And that's what I got for you guys this week. And I will talk to you all next week.